Hi buddy, Michael here. Today's video, I want to explain to the English people and help them understand who our enemies are. Okay, let's go. Okay, this is an important video because I see many people falling for a lot of propaganda. And in fairness, I have fallen for some of this in the past. And that's why I'm sharing this information, to let the British people know who our actual enemies are, because there's all sorts of misinformation. And I believe a lot of this is coming from these enemies. And it's quite a genius military intelligence plan to demoralize Western nations so that these evil people can take over our countries. And it's a very, very complex subject because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, well, the World Economic Forum and the EU globalist communists are our enemy, and they seem to be hating Russia. So that means an enemy of my enemy is my friend. So a lot of them simp for Russia, but that's not the case. Russia is also our enemy. And I'm going to explain all these individual enemies in this video and try to explain some of our friends and how we can solve these problems. Well, I'm just going to interject here because listening back, I realized I've missed one enemy, and that is the most important enemy, or one of the most, and that is the enemy within. And that is a lot of our own leaders, such as the Fabian Society, and scumbag leaders such as Blair and Starmer, and all these subversive domestic agents. So it's not all just foreign enemies, as it says in America, foreign and domestic. And the Fabian communist leaders are our domestic enemies. And as I always say, the first place we need to look is in the mirror. And we need to clean house of all the Fabian communists within our own country. Okay, so first and foremost, let's start with the one that everybody knows is sort of the European Union Communist World Economic Forum, Ursula von der Leyen, all that. These are subversive communists who are trying to take over Europe and turn us into a communist European state. And they are the enemies of the European people. And what they want to do is bring down European nations. So this is why a lot of them support all the migration and, you know, Angela Merkel, open the borders, and all our countries seem to have open borders because they know that the national people of Europe do not want communism. So they need to demoralize and replace the European people so they can get a bunch of people in who will fall for their communist tactics. So they are our number one enemy. Number two, we have obviously the Islamic agenda. There is an Islamist agenda to take over Europe. And this has been going on for 1400 years. It's basically what happens in Islam. It's the Islamic Caliphate. It's been going on since the beginning of Islam. They obviously want to conquer the world, so it's natural that they're trying to take over Europe. And that's obvious for us all to see. That's an obvious agenda going on. I don't need to explain it much more, to be honest. But a lot of the propaganda will be coming from the rich states, such as Qatar, but also the likes of Iran. They'll be flooding our universities with all the Islamists and all this propaganda. So they are our second enemy. Now, number three, this is where we get onto some people are misguided on. It's Russia. They are a big enemy. And if I'm honest, I fell for some of the propaganda in the initial stages, but I'm starting to realize what's going on. Because if you understand that Russia do not like the Anglo-Saxons, I said this in my previous video, they do not like the Anglo-Saxon world, and they want a Eurasian empire to replace the Anglo-Saxon empire, which is the Anglo-Saxons, Britain, America, Canada, Australia, and essentially the Anglo-Saxon world, which they see as essentially their arch nemesis. And as I said in my previous video, the likes of Dugin, who is close to Putin, apparently he's the ideologue who's similar to Putin, they openly admit that they dislike the Anglo-Saxons. And a lot of this demoralization tactics of our countries will be coming from Russia. Make no mistake about it. And they're smart because they've also put a load of pro-Russia propaganda in there as well. This is why so many people on the right, if you notice, they simp for Russia. But this is all part of the psychological game, where our enemies can actually get us to demoralize our own people and simp for the enemy, which is Russia. And recently I've seen some videos by some Africans who are saying that Russians are getting involved in Africa. And whilst they're subverting Africans, this African was saying their plan is to use Africa to destroy Europe. So this is why they're behind a lot of this African migration into Europe, to destroy Europe, because they need to destroy the Anglo world and the European world so that they can have their Eurasian empire. So number three is Russia. Number 4, we have China. China, again, is another communist enemy that we face. And most of the enemies we faced are communist, because the EU commies, Russia pretty much commies, and China the commies. Let's just look at how they've subverted our country, no doubt. Keir Starmer is virtually a puppet of China. He gave the Chagos Islands away, which benefits China. The net zero scam, where we don't save the planet, we just offshore all our energy and all our manufacturing to China, it benefits China and destroys our country. And again, a lot of this propaganda to demoralize us will be probably coming from China. And the BRICS agenda, because Russia and China are teaming up to take down the West and have a Eurasian empire where they run things rather than the West, the Anglo-Saxon world. And let's just look at who they're allying with. Russian leadership is evil. The Chinese communists are evil. They're allying with the Ayatollah in Iran, who have killed 100,000 innocent Iranians, who are great people, but their leadership are evil. Just as the Chinese, Russians, Iranians, they're all wonderful people, but their leadership is evil. Just as the British people are wonderful, but Keir Starmer and the commies are evil. The Europeans are wonderful, but our communist leaders are evil. And this is not about people hating one another. The people, we all need to unite and defeat these our evil leaders. So to clarify, China, the number 4, that is our 4th enemy. So to conclude, I believe there are 4 main enemies. You have the West European commies, you have the Islamic agenda or the Islamist agenda, you have Russia, and you have China. They are the 4 main enemies. And they are all colluding. As I said, you see Russia, China, Iran colluding with each other, just as what happened in the likes of, or the Marxists and Islamists collude. You're seeing it in the UK. The Green Party has been infested with Marxists and Islamists, and they want to overthrow our Western democracy, and then they want to put in either communism or Islamic theocracy. And we must push back against it. And one thing I want to make clear is, as I said at the beginning, just because someone is an enemy of our enemy, so just because Russia is the enemy of the globalists in Europe, doesn't mean that Russia is good. That's a mistake, to be honest, I made many years ago, but I've come to realise, hold on, that's stupid. Just because an enemy is an enemy of my enemy doesn't make them a friend. And I also want to finish the video, we're getting to, I believe this is an important point, and this is the subject of Israel. Because a lot of people, especially on the extreme far right, love to make everything about Israel. And the first thing, as soon as you say enemies of Britain, the first thing they'll say is, oh, it's Israel and the Jews. But when I've looked into this subject, I do not see Israel and Jews as an enemy of Britain at all. Yes, there are annoying leftist Jews. Yes, I understand George Soros, Barbary Sanger, or whatever her name is, Barbara Spector. These are evil subversive Jews who need to be fought, but they're no different than many of the evil subversive Christians, such as the Vatican, such as the Church of England. They're all for open borders. A load of Christians are promoting all this nonsense as well. So that doesn't mean that all Christians are evil, and it doesn't mean that all Jews are evil and that they're an enemy. Christians are not an enemy, neither are the Jews or Israel. And a lot of this is just propaganda. I believe a lot of it is probably the hardcore Islamic propaganda to make us to hate Jews and Israel because they have a special obsession as well. And a lot of it is rooted in Christianity and Islamic theology where, you know, the Jews were the original God's chosen people, but now the Christians think they are, the Muslims think they are, and therefore they have to dislike the Jews. And there is a great history of that in Christianity and Islam, of persecuting the Jews unnecessarily because they believe in ridiculous dogma that doesn't make any sense. There's been loads of Christian persecution of Jews throughout history based on the ideology that they killed the Jews, which is a load of rubbish because Jesus even said himself, nobody kills me, I lay down my life. Because in Christian theology, they have this weird conclusion that Jesus had to be a blood sacrifice. So obviously nobody can kill him. He had to lay down his life. So if anything, they should be thanking the Jews for killing Jesus, because if the Jews didn't kill Jesus, then they wouldn't be saved. But it's a load of rubbish. They misinterpreted the teachings of Christ, the spiritual wisdom of Christ. But I can save that for another video. But they'll always push things said. So for example, they'll say Netanyahu says the Palestinians should go to Europe. But Netanyahu and most of the sensible Jews I follow do not believe that at all. What they were saying in this clip that they've taken out of context is, if European countries such as Britain and Germany are going to recognize Palestine and they want to help Palestine so much, why don't they take in Palestinian immigrants and see what the Palestinians are like? That's what he was saying. He was not advocating that we do it and saying there's some conspiracy to take over Palestine and put all the Palestinians into Europe. No, that's not a conspiracy that's going on. He was simply saying, if you love Palestine so much, why don't you take in some of the Palestinians, and you'll see when they do an October 7 in our countries, you'll see the problems that we face and how you have to use force to deal with it. So it's not some great plan. They just misquote things or take things out of context. So this obsession with Israel being our enemy is overblown. I do not believe that to be the case. And some people are not going to like it, but you've been propagandized by third worlders, probably from Iran and Pakistan, and low IQ morons such as Candace Owens. You know, you're not some great wise sage. You're a low IQ moron like Candace Owens and Jake Shields and all these clowns, Andrew Tate, Sneeko. Not exactly the brains of Britain and the brains of the world. And to finish the video, I always want to say the solution. Now, I think our enemies want us divided. So they want the Anglo world divided. Like Russia's aim is to disband or separate Europe from America, and clause basically the righteousness would be Europe and the Anglo world. So they want America and Britain separated. They want to cause division between Europe and America. They want isolationism. Have you noticed how so many on the right, oh, we just need to be ourselves, stop getting too much involved in the world? Because they want to cause isolationism so that they can take over the world. If they divide us, they can defeat us. But what I want, personally, is I want the Anglo world to come together. I want an Anglo alliance between Britain, America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all those countries. But I also want a United States of Europe under God, under Christ. And I want us to defeat the European Union and the commies in Europe. And I want a United States of Europe under Christ rather than under communism. And what that would look like, it would be European countries restoring the demographic homogeneity of our countries, for the most part, like 90 to 95%, and celebrating our individual European countries and living and existing as brothers and sisters, as Englishmen, French, German, etc., etc. And we will be one nation under God, with the spirit of Christ and the spirit of righteousness. And you'd also have a European alliance with the likes of America, Canada, etc. And then we would encourage these evil regimes to overthrow, we would encourage the Islamic world to overthrow their evil Islamic regime, such as Iran. We'd support the Iranian people overthrowing the Ayatollah. We'd support the Russian people and the Chinese people overthrowing their communists if they need the help. Not that I'm saying we need to get involved, but we would be the arbiters of freedom, because God wants us to live in freedom and under the righteousness of his spirit and Christ. God doesn't want people living under authoritarian regimes. And we do it with the power of the spirit. We wouldn't be doing it with the power of the military. We'd be doing it with the power of the spirit. And when they see the light coming from Europe and the Anglo world, they'll want to chase that freedom. Because as I've always said, there's a YouTube channel I follow, and they go around the world and they ask people in Russia, in Ukraine, in China, in Africa. They always say, if you couldn't live in your country, where would you want to live? They all say America. I can believe it. I was like, why does everybody want to live in America? And they want to live in America because it's the land of the free. It was set up by Anglos to be the ultimate bastion of freedom. And all individual people want to live under freedom, but freedom under God, not freedom under our modern liberalism degeneracy. We've removed God. So the problem isn't really liberalism. The problem is atheism. But if we have freedom under God's grace, the whole world will live like that. We'll have a golden age. That's what we need to aspire to. And a world will be a beautiful place. It will be Christ's vision of a kingdom of heaven on earth, which will come because we're leaving the Kali Yuga and we're entering towards the light. We're moving out of winter towards summer. And it's going to take generations and generations and generations, but we're the mustard seed who are going to bring it forth. And that is the way of the Logos. Okay? So if you like what I'm talking about and you want to educate many more British people on our enemies and our solutions, share this video with as many people as you can. Like it. Subscribe if you're new, and God bless everybody today. Goodbye.